Hello, everyone. What's unfolding right now between Washington and Ottawa doesn't resemble a negotiation. It doesn't even feel like an ordinary dispute. It looks more like deliberate destruction. For the past 30 years, the USMCA, along with its earlier version, NAFTA, has served as the foundation of North American trade, an annual flow of $1.6 trillion representing the biggest, most deeply intertwined economic relationship anywhere on the planet. It offered stability. It offered predictability. It was the bedrock. But as of this morning, that bedrock is fracturing. Donald Trump believed he could pressure Canada into submission. He assumed he was facing the familiar, agreeable Ottawa of the past, the obliging neighbor that always acquiesces, the junior partner that backs down when Washington raises its voice. He read the situation wrong. Mark Carney didn't back away. He didn't dispatch a discreet negotiator. He didn't quietly trade favors to quiet the storm. Instead, he took a step no modern Canadian Prime Minister has ever taken. He stared at a $1.6 trillion trading partnership and declared, "We would rather watch it fall apart than accept dictation." That one declaration has already sent tremors through supply chains, through market tickers, and very likely through the retirement portfolios many of you hold today. Trump is furious. The White House is scrambling to contain the fallout, while much of the business media is missing the real story. Over the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through precisely how the USMCA structure began to unravel, who held firm and who wavered, and why the $1.6 trillion system most of us have relied on our entire adult lives is now effectively on emergency support. So let's move past the noise. Here is exactly what took place over the last 72 hours. It began, as these things so often do, with an ultimatum. President Trump, frustrated that the mandated USMCA 5-year review was not delivering the giveaways he expected, chose to overturn the entire process. Before dawn, he posted on Truth Social a set of demands that sounded closer to an ultimatum than diplomacy. He instructed Canada to remove its cultural content safeguards for U.S. streaming services, completely open its telecom sector to American control, and eliminate every remaining dairy and poultry supply management restriction. If Ottawa failed to comply within 48 hours, Trump stated the USMCA would be considered null, and he would immediately apply a 25% tariff across every category of Canadian goods entering the United States. Under normal circumstances, this is the moment Ottawa would go into crisis mode. A task force would form. The trade minister would catch the overnight flight to Washington carrying carefully worded talking points and a practiced smile. They would search for an escape route. That pattern did not repeat itself. Instead, Prime Minister Mark Carney called an unscheduled news conference on Parliament Hill. He appeared calm. He showed no sign of defensiveness. He looked like a former central banker who had already run the numbers and mapped every weak point. Looking straight into the lenses, he said with absolute composure, "The USMCA is a partnership, not an extortion scheme, and Canada refuses to renegotiate under threat." He offered no counterproposal. He asked for no delay. He rejected the whole premise of the demand. Then he raised the stakes. He stated that if Washington moved ahead with across-the-board tariffs, Canada would activate its own countermeasures, targeting U.S. agricultural shipments, limiting exports of rare earth minerals essential to American defense suppliers, and fast-tracking new trade pacts with the European Union and Indo-Pacific partners. Social platforms erupted. Trump fired off a series of attacks labeling Carney a washed-up banker and a tool of globalist circles. Yet while the president was venting online, something striking occurred in the markets. The Canadian dollar remained steady. American agricultural futures plunged. For the first time in recent memory, a U.S. president threatened to dismantle the entire arrangement, and the smaller nation did not rush to appease. They prepared their own response. You have to grasp how extraordinary this moment is. This is not another lumber tariff spat. This is the possible unwinding of a $1.6 trillion integrated economic system. Trump is used to calling the shots. He is used to setting terms. But this week he learned that dominance only functions when the other side accepts that it has more at risk. And Mark Carney has already done the calculation. I realize that sounds like posturing, so let me walk you through the concrete figures. Because once you see the exposed connections in this relationship, it becomes clear this is not about politics or ideology. It is about basic math. And right now, the math is shifting against Washington. Exhibit 1, the manufacturing shock. Within 60 minutes of Trump's statement, shares of GM, Ford, and Stellantis fell sharply. Why? The North American auto industry is not three separate national sectors. It is one living cross-border organism. An engine block may be poured in Ontario, machined in Michigan, fitted with wiring from Chihuahua, tested again in Ontario, then sent to Kentucky for final assembly. Apply a 25% tariff anywhere along that chain, and you are not hurting Canada. You are hurting Dearborn. You are hurting Detroit. Procurement teams were on urgent calls within minutes, recalculating per-vehicle costs once the border effectively becomes a toll gate. They understand something the White House seems to have overlooked. It is literally impossible to manufacture a North American vehicle without Canadian aluminum, Canadian steel, and Canadian components. Exhibit 2, the energy choke point. This is the piece American coverage almost always downplays. They portray Canada as a polite neighbor that sends hockey stars and maple syrup. In reality, Canada is the single largest foreign source of energy for the United States, not one of the largest, the largest. 60% of America's imported crude arrives from Alberta. The pipelines that supply the Midwest and Gulf Coast refineries are Canadian-built and carry Canadian oil. Beyond crude, Canada provides uranium for U.S. nuclear facilities, potash for American farms, and rare earth elements the Pentagon requires for advanced weaponry. When Carney mentioned retaliatory steps, he was not talking about symbolic duties on whiskey. He was talking about tightening the flow of heavy crude that American refineries are specially designed to handle. Even a modest reduction in that volume would not nudge U.S. gasoline prices upward. They would surge. The mere mention of the possibility drove energy futures sharply higher in afternoon trading. That is the market signaling that Carney is holding a lever Trump cannot easily neutralize. Exhibit 3. The global positioning play. Trump repeatedly paints Carney as a Davos-style globalist. And yes, Carney spent years inside the international financial system. He ran the Bank of England, he led the Financial Stability Board, and he maintains direct lines to every major central bank and finance ministry worldwide. Right now, that network is functioning as a strategic asset. While Trump was firing off messages, reports indicate Carney was on the phone, not with Washington, but with Brussels, London, Canberra, and Tokyo. He is quietly assembling support. Several sources mention a joint statement in preparation between Canada and the European Union that would reaffirm commitment to rules-based trade and criticize unilateral tariff threats against allied countries. Do you see the contrast? Trump is swinging at one opponent after another. Carney is weaving a broader network. He is rallying the developed world to view the United States as the unpredictable party. He is using his reputation to reassure markets while framing Trump as the source of instability. The scoreboard reflects the result. The Dow dropped 500 points in one session. The Toronto Exchange hardly budged. That is the metric that carries the most weight. Money moves toward predictability and flees uncertainty. So why is this dynamic playing out? Why is the world's most powerful country having difficulty intimidating a nation with roughly 1/10 its population? Because Trump has stepped into a trap largely of his own making, and his strategy has become predictable. We have watched this approach before. In 2018, the steel tariffs caught everyone off guard. In 2025, the surprise element has vanished. The entire Trump method relies on speed and intimidation. Strike hard, strike early, and watch the other side fold before the real costs arrive. He needs the fast, visible win for the news cycle. But what happens when the target absorbs the blow and returns fire? There is no follow-up plan. When Carney simply said no, he completely stalled Trump's momentum. Now the president is compelled to act on his own words. He must carry out the tariffs. And here lies the bitter paradox. If he does, American consumers feel the pain immediately. Vehicle prices jump overnight, fuel costs climb, parts shortages appear. Factories across Michigan and Ohio begin posting layoff warnings. The very working-class voters Trump built his brand around defending are the ones most directly harmed when supply chains freeze. He understands this. His own advisors understand this. Internal leaks describe an open conflict inside the West Wing between hardline trade advisors and economic pragmatists. The economists are warning that dismantling the USMCA would spark a manufacturing recession in key electoral states well before the next cycle. Yet Trump is cornered. His ego will not permit a step back. He delivered the ultimatum in public. Backing down now would mean being visibly outmaneuvered by a Canadian economist. So he escalates the performance, attacking Carney personally, hinting at labeling Canada a security risk, even suggesting a pause in NORAD cooperation. It is all spectacle, the agitated behavior of someone who finds retreat more frightening than impact. He is approaching international trade as though it were a leveraged buyout. In business deals, you can bankrupt the other side. In geopolitics, the other side still exists the following day. Canada is not a division to be acquired. The border is not a line item. Trump is defying economic gravity, and gravity eventually prevails. Consider the reaction from American business. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce did not line up behind the president. They cautioned that the damage to North American competitiveness could be severe and long-lasting. Consider the Republican senators representing border states, almost completely silent. They know their local economies are fused with Canada at the deepest level. Trump is isolated on ground he prepared himself, and the tide is coming in. Now let's talk about Mark Carney. If you only know him from news clips, you might see him as another polished technocrat in a dark suit, another moderate placeholder. That view would be seriously mistaken. Mark Carney is not a typical elected official. He is someone who designs responses to crises. He steered the Bank of England through Brexit. He recognizes the early signs when balance sheets turn critical. He knows how to locate an off-ramp when every path appears blocked. When Trump storms, Carney computes. Watch the footage from that press conference again. No theatrical movements, no raised volume, just a dark suit, deliberate pacing, sentences constructed around facts rather than sound bites. He is intentionally presenting himself as the steady, evidence-based figure in a chaotic environment. On the world stage, that posture is valuable currency at the moment. Global markets are weary of volatility. Europe is fatigued. Asian investors are nervous. Capital is searching for any indication that someone is still making decisions with data instead of volume. Carney is supplying that indication. He is signaling that Canada remains the dependable partner, that it respects contracts, follows procedure, and behaves like the mature party. In doing so, he converts every Trump outburst into an advertisement for Canada. Every threat to disrupt trade makes Carney appear as the defender of stability. Every supply chain interruption makes Canada look like the secure destination for rational investment. This is classic asymmetric strategy. Canada cannot match the United States in a head-on contest. The American economy is roughly 10 times larger. The military imbalance is overwhelming. But Carney recognizes he does not have to prevail in a direct fight. He only has to make continued conflict prohibitively expensive for Trump. He is aiming at precisely the pressure points, the industries, the congressional districts, the voter groups Trump cannot risk alienating. He is not wielding a hammer. He is using a scalpel. And here is the element Carney understands more clearly than most: timing. Trump works on a political clock that measures success in hours and days. Carney is operating on a completely different horizon. He knows that if he simply maintains position, mounting domestic pressure inside the United States will grow stronger each day until the price of continuing exceeds the price of backing down. It is a test of endurance disguised as a face-off. One side is shouting and veering wildly. The other has fixed the steering and is quietly monitoring the dashboard. Which one runs out of runway first? So why does this matter to you? Perhaps you are watching from Pennsylvania, Texas, or somewhere in the UK. Perhaps you see this as nothing more than two leaders flexing. That would be a misjudgment. This directly affects the cost of nearly everything you purchase. The North American economy is not three independent systems. It is one machine with 30 years of integration fused into every connection. If Carney and Trump break that machine, every component locks up. Thinking of buying a car this year? Expect an extra $4,000 to $5,000 on the window sticker. Shopping for groceries? Fertilizer and shipping expenses will push prices higher across the entire store. Your cereal, your milk, your vegetables, employed in manufacturing, anticipate hiring pauses and reduced shifts. But the economic impact is only part of the story. Something more fundamental is fracturing. We are witnessing the end of a core belief that underpinned the Western alliance for 3 generations. When the American president issues a demand, allied capitals fall in line. That belief ended this week. Canada, the steadiest, most dependable partner, said no, openly, decisively, and with real economic tools in hand. And if Canada can say no, who follows? The European Union? Japan? Australia? We are seeing American economic dominance weaken in real time. And the catalyst was not China or Russia. It was Washington choosing to treat its closest partners as opponents. Carney is not merely protecting dairy quotas. He is defending the idea that sovereign countries cannot be coerced into submission by their biggest trading partner. He is establishing a boundary. You can be our ally or you can be our rival, but you cannot occupy both roles simultaneously. So how does this conclude? This is the part that should concern you most. Because in past standoffs, there is usually a discreet call. Both sides settle on language that allows everyone to save face, then issue a bland joint statement. Trump does not do discreet after public defiance, and Carney cannot retreat after placing Canada's independence on the table. 3 plausible paths forward. Scenario A, prolonged standoff. Trump enacts the tariffs. Canada responds with precision strikes. Prices rise on both sides of the border. Both sides entrench for a drawn-out trade conflict measured in quarters rather than weeks. Markets weaken, expansion slows, consumer sentiment deteriorates. Eventually, the accumulated pain compels Congress or corporate America to force a resolution. Painful, but potentially reversible. Scenario B, full rupture. Trump goes beyond tariffs and formally exits the USMCA. He activates emergency authority to curb Canadian energy flows. This is the worst-case path. Immediate industrial downturn throughout the Great Lakes region. Supply networks constructed over 3 decades dismantled in weeks. It sounds extreme, but under this administration, extreme has become a realistic contingency. Scenario C, strategic reorientation. Carney outplays Trump on the longboard. Canada rapidly concludes emergency trade deals with Europe and Asia-Pacific partners. It redirects energy exports toward global buyers and deliberately reduces reliance on the United States. Canada suffers short-term losses, but over 10 years it permanently ends America's privileged position in Canadian trade, not temporarily, but structurally. My assessment is that we are currently in Scenario A, but the momentum towards Scenario B is increasing daily. This is normally the moment responsible leadership identifies an exit. Trump does not search for exits, and Carney has sealed his own door. We are navigating unknown territory. Carney has shown that a middle-sized power can confront a superpower when it possesses genuine leverage and the resolve to use it. Standing firm carries costs, however, and every one of us will soon feel those costs. The real question is not whether pain is coming. The real question is who yields first. Do you believe Carney is protecting Canada's independence, or is he risking a $1.6 trillion partnership that neither country can easily replace? I want your candid view. Is this the end of the USMCA as we know it, or the necessary jolt that finally compels Washington to respect its allies as equals? Leave your thoughts below. I read them all. And if you want to follow what develops next, make sure you're subscribed. History is moving fast. Don't look away.